so many different things. Expose yourself to lots of different ideas.
Good.
But you're absolutely right. If you don't like it, somebody else is going to eat your lunch. If you don't like what you do, because
Good.
they will be putting.
We have to move on, I think. The next topic is changing countries and cultures. And I want to just give you 3 examples very quickly. One is Mara, who has essentially made her career in Spain, and she'll tell you why. And the second is Elizabeth, who was a postdoc for 2 years in Munich. And the third is Yamuna, who moved from India to the States 4 years ago. So, Mara, let's begin with you.
Yes.
Because you're an exception, and I think it's important that people in the audience hear that you can make a scientific career without doing what everybody tells you you have to.
Yeah, so, of course, I mean, I think that one of the best things in science is the opportunity to move to a different country and experience a different culture and a different lab, right? Lab culture also. In my case, I'm pretty old, so at that time it was not such compulsory as it is now. But also, in fact, I tried to go to Germany because I had a lab there that I chose after my PhD. But, well, my father went ill, and I'm a medical doctor, so I had to stay, basically. And then when I could have had the opportunity, my life was already too complicated to move. And what I learned is that, in fact, there are very good labs also in Spain. And in fact, there are very good international labs in Spain, right? Mm-hmm. So the difference is probably that you don't move physically. But in fact, I have a very international lab. Most, not say all, of my collaborations are abroad. And of course, I have made short visits to different labs, like the longest one was 9 months, so not very long, but enough to pick up this international view and vision. And what I think it's more important than moving physically is moving mentally. So to be exposed to the diversity of ideas and the diversity of lab cultures is what makes you grow as a scientist. And since I'm very outspoken and I love to collaborate and I have many collaborators abroad, this has helped me a lot to really build a very diverse and rich lab in terms of bringing all these cultural differences without moving physically, let's say.
Elizabeth, what was good about coming 2 years to Germany? Would you do it again?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, okay, good.
Yeah, I love my life here. I love my life in California. I'm from Mexico, so I've been like a gypsy a little bit. I lived in England 1 year too. I think it's fun. It's much easier when you're younger. Like you say, your life gets a little bit complicated and you also become like, I don't know, more like comfortable. So it's important to do it when you're young. It exposes to... It's a little harder. I mean, it's true, it's a little harder if you're a postdoc from a different country and you have the culture shock and the other things and you feel like, oh, everybody else is sailing through and here I am not knowing how to order food and, you know, life is hard as it is and then there's this. Some days it's harder. Some days you just want to tell people like, oh, just drop it and speak Spanish. But they don't. and so it's a little harder, but it's a lot of fun. And then then you find yourself, having friends all over and understanding cultures and understanding where people are coming from, So I think it's great. I think you should try to do it as much as you can. And then, you don't know where the world will take you. I didn't mean to end up in California, and I'm really happy there. And I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years, and I'm sure I'll be happy there too. But yeah, I mean, keep in mind it makes it a little bit harder sometimes. But it's also more fun and highly enriching. So I highly recommend it. At least do it once. And as you say, culturally, doesn't have to be further away in space, but it has to be away from your comfort zone. I mean, and this is something in general. It's good advice. Always get out of your comfort zone. That's how you keep this so otherwise you stagnate. So this is one very forceful way of getting out of your comfort zone that I think it's fantastic.
Thank you. Yamuna? So what Ramona told me about the situation in India reminded me very much of Joan Steitz's description in 1967 of coming to the LMB and having to choose a problem. And I think what both experiences show is that in both Ramona's case and Joan's case, they actually were tempted to try a much harder problem than they might otherwise have taken on. And in both cases, it formed the foundation for a really great career. For example, Joan just won 2 days ago the Lasker Award. Ramona had all these offers at the full professor level before deciding in Chicago. So choosing a hard problem early on in your career, although it may seem tough at the time, can open new fields. And if you first find out that you can solve a hard problem, then that causes you to continue to choose hard problems. I think we have time for only 2 more questions before we open up the discussion. And so I'm going to ask Mara, which is a hard one, or 2 hard ones, work-life balance. Is it possible? And is there a right time to start a family? And she consented to answer both questions.
Okay, so having 4 sons, I think it's obviously possible. I don't tell you how, but it's possible. But it's of course hard, and part of it is because the society is not prepared for having females that are succeeding in science and being PIs and being directors of centers or so. It's not just in India, in my country also. I mean, you have the leaky pipeline, so you get a lot of PhD students, and then you get fewer postdocs, and then you get fewer PIs, and then you get 1 maybe director of the 45 centers that we have in Barcelona. But this said, I think that even this is probably more difficult for female, right? I would encourage all of you to pursue being a PI and having your own lab, having your own ideas, and you can do it. So the answer is you can. It is possible, right? The right time, I mean, I know that now you guys plan everything, so like, I see this, people plan, no, it's not just the right moment, right? I don't think there is a right moment for biology things. I mean, having kids or a family is not something that you can decide, because you will not have all the arguments, right? You will never know. So in my case, I didn't plan anything. It came out as it came. So my first son was born when I was, before defending my thesis, and he was crying the whole day. And so my boss was calling me, "Oh, okay, have you prepared your presentation?" And I say, "Oh, I cannot do it because, my son is crying the whole day and I cannot think." I mean, so, and she was kind of, "Oh, you probably are not educating your son well." Which is, I thought, how can I possibly educate a 1-month-old child? I mean, the brain is not yet there, right? So anyway, in the end, you get there, and it's a challenge. It's more difficult, but it happens as we were saying before. No? I think scientists are even better when they have challenges. I mean, when you have to get your ideas while you are, I don't know, pushing the chair of your son or whatever, this makes you more efficient in the end, because you profit every single little moment of your life, right? And one thing that you, of course, forget about is about going to the hairdresser or things like that. But so what? No, I don't care much. So besides that, I think that to me, there is not, the decision-making process of having children or so is, to me, is better if you leave it to, well, life itself, right? Instead of planning it. This said, again, I think that having a family, to me, it has been really inspiring and really a very important part of my life. I mean, you can have it or not, but in my case, in fact, I will show some of my work, and I think one of my best ideas came from having the experience of being a mother. So, and this working with plasticity all your time, right? So I think that it's really a great experience, and that it's worth trying to balance these two things.
Good. I think with that we'll close the more formal part of the discussion, and we'll open it to questions or comments, because there is a generational difference, and maybe you want to tell us that some of the things we've said are nonsense, or maybe you want to tell us that certain things are not, that there are certain topics we haven't covered and we should. So let's open it up for questions if we've got microphones. Yes.
Good catch.
You guys are basketball players.
Yeah, that's true. We're practicing sometimes a little bit. So my question, it's basically also, I would say, one topic that we haven't covered very much. I would like to ask a question. What do you think about interdisciplinarity of research? And for example, for Dr. Polly, I know that she was interested at some time in this chaos field to apply it to immunology. And so my question is, should you consider to learn some other subjects during your PhD, for example, math or physics, and how deeply one should go into it?
Polly.
So you should learn as much as you can about as much as you can. But I wouldn't learn another subject just because it's another subject. I started learning about chaos and the mathematics behind it because, A, I got given this book when I got this new job on chaos, which was fascinating. And I thought, wow, if we could apply this to the immune system, wouldn't that be wonderful? That's the reason I started studying that aspect, science. Having said that, right, you'll see a YouTube somewhere on something really interesting. If it interests you, go learn about it, even if it has nothing to do